Welcome to Transformations with Tara Sutphen. Tara Sutphen is the author of Blame It on Your Past Lives, Soul Agreements, and The Abenda Chronicles. Grammy-nominated audios, videos, and MP3 series. You can find these MP3 series now at tarainsight.com.
Good morning. I am Jason D McKean, and I am standing in for Tara Sutphen for Transformations on this beautiful Friday morning. And I have with me my dear friend and colleague, Scott Grossberg, who is an attorney and author, NLP practitioner, certified life coach, what's that word that Hawaiian
Ho'oponopono.
yeah, it's like that. That's something that you have to really you have to take the course just to be able to pronounce what the course name is in that one. And an NLP practitioner. Scott, what don't you do?
I don't host radio shows as well as you do, Jason.
Well, I would beg to differ. I think that you could just come into that, and it's just like one more feather in your cap. Happy April Fool's Day, or April 1st.
It is. Happy April 1st to you and all the listeners.
Have you been pranked yet?
Oh, don't do this to me. No, it's too early in the morning. But I'm sure it's coming. It's a long day still.
It is a long day still. Is there any, for the significance of April 1st, is there any kind of from your either magical background, any basis in why today that there's this trickster energy?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, first of all, we're moving into spring, the start of new things. If you look at it from a numerology standpoint, you've got April, which is 4, normally the letter of foundation, and then 1, which is new beginnings. And if you kind of look at it in context of you can't start new until you pull the rug out from under the old, it makes sense to me. When you also take into account and I'm sure there's some real historical reason for April Fool's Day, but I kind of look at it like the Fool card, and more importantly, the court jester. And when you look at the whole purpose of the court jester was to point fun at and make light of situations so that you take a step back and get a better perspective of life.
Right. Interesting. From the Tarot standpoint, it's like the 4s, they represent that solidity. There's like 4 legs on a table.
Yep.
4 tires on a car, 4
walls
to a
on a house. Yep.
Yeah. It's people can feel like, I've made it. They can kind of hit that plateau, and in the Tarot, it's just a plateau to hit, and it's not where one just totally rests their laurels and waits for, it's like they've made it. It's not a card of having made it. There's still, the 5 comes in, and that pulls the rug out from under you.
Yeah, the five, the number of change. I mean, even if you look at the number 4 in the majors, which is the Emperor card, even the Emperor aspires to do something else. He doesn't rest on his laurels. He's not that guy. You get to number 4, and that's where you also realize, is that all there is?
Yeah. Fascinating. That's why I love talking to you, because we can just go deep instantly. But you have been out in the world recently, right? Didn't you?
I did. I re-entered the world. I've done a few live events. Most recently, I was at the Magic Castle in Hollywood. I did a 2-day divination fortune telling. I've now moved into what I call the Fearless Fortune Teller training, which is where, I mean, frankly, Jason, you and I've been reading now for, I hate to admit this, but it's going to give my age away. I've been reading now for over half a decade. And I'm 64 years old, and I got my first deck of tarot cards when I was 5 or 6.
So when you say half a decade, you mean like half a century?
Half a century. I'm sorry.
I was going to say,
See,
what, 5 years? No.
No, wishful thinking. No, half a. You're right.
Now it's like,
let's
whoa.
restart. Yeah, no.
Half a century. That's intense.
Half a century, and over half a century. And what I've come to realize is that while you and I took to it naturally, I mean, look at our families and the whole backgrounds that we have.
Right, the lineage, the DNA, and all.
Yeah, a lot of people don't have that, and so they are closet readers. And they're scared to death to read for someone else. They might do it for a real close friend or a family member.
Yeah.
And certainly for themselves, quietly, privately, and secretly. It's their dirty little secret. And yet they have this burning desire to actually get out in the world and do something, whether it's online, virtually, or live. And so I just said, you know what? Let's just do 2 things. First, I'm going to start using the F word, fortune telling.
Oh boy.
I'm going to use the fortune telling word. And I will explain that in a minute, why that was such a big deal. Because for you, those listeners, that's a big deal. Most tarot readers, tea readers, etc., phrenologists, they don't use fortune telling because, particularly me, I stayed away from it because I always adopted another dear friend of mine, James Wanless, calls it fortune creation. I've always loved that concept, and I'm sure we'll get into it today. So everybody stays away from fortune telling. Well, the reality is that when you read for somebody and they walk away from the table, they're saying, hey, I went and got my fortune told. We can call it all, we can say whatever we want, but the audience, the sitter, the querent, the seeker is they're coming for fortune telling, right? So I've always said I'm a walking fortune cookie. And the reality is I found a market with closet readers who wanted to start getting bolder and more self-confidence in their reading style. So I created the Fearless Fortune Teller. And then I went to the Magic Castle, and I've been at the castle now. I've been a member for a very long time. About 13 years ago, I proposed to them and they accepted. I've been teaching at the Magic Castle, which is normally a private club for magician members, divination for magicians. It's how to take numerology, how to take symbolism, etc., put it into your act and or take on the persona of a fortune teller. Well, we opened it up to the public this year for the first time. And so it was members and the public, and it was a workshop. It was wonderful. It was a 2-day workshop where not only was I able to teach, not only was I able to perform and do gallery readings and demonstrations, but then at the very end of it, there was an adaptation of what I offer periodically through my website and online, this workshop intensive designed much like an acting workshop, where you come in, you do a reading, and I'll critique it. I'll watch you read somebody else in the class, and then I'll give you my thoughts and some scripting ideas and some entertainment ideas and some storytelling ideas to take it to the next level. And it was a lot of fun. And I'm glad we're starting to reopen. Everybody was, just so for those listeners, everybody was socially distancing. Everybody did wear masks coming in, not in the theater, but everybody was socially distanced and everybody is healthy. No, but there was nothing going on. And what a wonderful group of people. Yes, there were a couple people in there who'd been in other workshops of mine, but for the most part, these were people I had never met before. And it was absolutely wonderful. So thank you for asking. And yes, things are starting to open up, although I still love doing this online platform.
I think that, because I was, doing a live gathering in Sedona a couple weekends ago, it's having that choice of doing either or, because you can reach a wider audience through Zoom, but there's nothing like that one-on-one, that live contact, especially with how one shares like the spiritual nature of tarot, of fortune telling, right? Where let's just use it, right? Because you're making it comfortable. And I am one of those readers who kind of steers clear from, just trying to like be in that category, because it's shorthand. It's like calling someone a psychic or so.
Yep. And I've stayed away from fortune telling, psychic. I've stayed away, occult. I've stayed away from all of these terms, not because of my particular beliefs, but because of the stigma that's attached to it. It's very much like, I mean, you and I've talked about philosophy before, and you've done my proper fortune or proper tarot.
The proper.
Well, you know what? We'll talk about that in a minute.
No, I just love that.
We should explain that to folks. But, because of the Western mind, I got a lot of pushback once I started using that term. It's very interesting. It's much like you and I've had discussions before. You use the word God. I stay away from even that term. And again, has nothing to do with my philosophical or religious or metaphysical beliefs. It's the fact that there's just so much laid onto that. Yeah. However, again, you and I are readers, and to call ourselves readers, I don't think is profound enough and expansive enough. And it doesn't meet the market, if we want to use those terms, that you and I adhere to. I mean, people come to you, not only do you look like a frickin' tarot wizard, you wrote the book on it, right? And there's an experience that they want. And I think that most people who come to folks like you and me, at their initial need, they want comfort about the future. They want certainty. They want all of that stuff.
Yes.
Now, then they come to us and they find out that's not really what you and I do, that we're more into what I call energy sculpting, that we take these patterns and help them shape their future. We don't tell them this is it and your future is fixed. So they find out there's more. But at its core, you say fortune teller and everybody knows what it is. Everybody knows what that is.
Yeah. They know kind of the world that they're entering. It's there's a mystical aspect to it. There is that layer of spirituality, and then there's just the what we will have as guidance. It's like we use words, and I think that, I mean, I certainly use energy also, chi, to help someone strengthen themselves.
Absolutely.
Where they are adept at helping to sculpt their future. I love that that terminology, because it's creation is there is an art form to it. How it is that we create our future. It's like we are artists in that regard.
Well, you and I are magicians. I mean, and I also use that word. And I have had pushback from theatrical magicians, because when I sign my books, I always I sign it to the person and it says "Making Magic Real," and it's a tagline I've used before.
Yeah.
And here's another perfect example of the entertainment community. When you say "Making Magic Real," I immediately get these pushbacks. What do you mean making magic real? Are you out of your mind? There's no such thing as real magic. Well, I'm sorry, but if I were to ask you, Jason, I think you would agree. Of course it's real. That it's a state of mind. It's a mental construct. And so if you and I can ethically nudge people into a more positive outlook of what we do, and maybe a different way of looking at their future and how much control they actually have if they'll agree to participate in their own success, which is a biggie, right? Because you and I think will agree that many of the people come to us, they actually don't want to do anything. They just want to be told everything's going to be okay. And so, and I'll give you a really good example of how words can get turned around. We just joked about proper tarot. And so for listeners, I have a Facebook group. You're welcome to join it, called the Proper Tarot School of Divination. Jason has been a guest professor in there and has taught his key readings, which absolutely spectacular. You can actually get in to the group and watch the replay of it if you actually want to see Jason at real work. But I got a lot
Creating
of
real magic.
real magic. I got a lot of pushback when I used the term proper tarot. And it was only from people here in the United States, by the way, because the name came to me when I was sitting down pre-pandemic with a very dear friend of mine from Britain.
Mhm.
And he and I were chatting, and I was telling him what I was doing. And he looked at me and he said, Scott, I'm not going to do the accent. He said, Scott, that's proper witchcraft, right? That was his term for all the stuff I was doing.
Right.
And I went, oh my God, I love that. I love that term. And he said, well, that's what you're doing. And I said, I'm going to get proper tarot. Now, in the British use, well, let me back up. In Western civilization here in the United States, we hear the term proper and we do exactly what Jason did a moment ago, proper being stuffy, and there's only one way to do it, and this is the right way.
Yeah.
That's not what proper means over in Britain. Over the British use of the term proper means everything. It means you've kind of embodied the whole thing. So proper tarot is actually just a discussion of everything tarot, everything divination. That's nothing to do with right or wrong. You can practice. I mean, people who know me know that I'm a big proponent of just read the way you want to. Throw the little white book away and let's work intuitively.
That's what I tell my students.
Well, that's why you and I work so well together. Just throw the little white book away and let's work from there. So people are getting past the term, but yeah, I got a lot of pushback with that terminology. And I'm fully aware that as a magician, quote unquote, the way we use words is very powerful. I mean, you can build it up, you can tear it down. And, I'm a big proponent, big adherent, big fan of Rumi. And Rumi had this wonderful discussion of what magic actually is. Many people don't even know that he wrote about it. And, he talks about that in one word, you can make a mountain. You can make a mountain out of straw. Using one word, you can do this. But in the end, magic is simply this, that in every breath, it transforms realities. And that's what we do.
Yeah. And, like in class, right. It's like that part about like throwing away kind of the rule books or whatever. It's like, of course, there are foundational aspects. It's like, I feel that helping a reader compose themselves so that they find their center, right. They find the source of where their own guidance is coming from, that one opens themselves to their spiritual nature, and usually they become this channel for the message. And yes, the cards, they'll have their say. They will have a story there. It's like I'm writing I was talking a little bit before we started a new book. It's a journal. It's for people to work on their own 3-card spreads and document them and journal it out. But it's like there's no like set way to read those 3 cards, and that's I am explaining some of that. And it's when you're in that place of that zone within yourself where you are connecting with your own spiritual source, and you are that open channel. It's like you'll find through the tarot the way forward as far as connecting with your querent, your sitter, your the person across from you.
And I think that what you just said is at least it's an integral part of the way I work with people, not only from what I might call tarot consulting. I don't do tarot readings. I'm doing more consulting where, again, I'm helping people find a path forward using the symbolism of the tarot, but in a much more concrete Virginia Satir family sculpting way. So that's when I talk about it as doing energy sculpting. It's using all the energies of the tarot, combined with, just this last few weekends ago, where I was at the Magic Castle and the first live Fearless Fortune Teller workshop. The energy in the room is far different than Zoom. And, you're able to work with people and create that sacred space and show them how to do that. And it was very interesting. I've started periodically using what was said to me, because sometimes we don't understand our own strengths as well as maybe someone who sees us understands them. And I had one of the participants at the end of the 2-day workshop. She raised her hand, and I just, called on her, and we're talking, and she said, this whole weekend has made me realize, Scott, you're like a doula for the soul. And I just loved that concept. And I think that's very much what you're talking about. It's, you can use tarot, you can use light bulbs, you can use keys. The reality, Jason, I think that what we do as real world magicians is help people awaken to their own spirituality and their own connectedness and their own oneness with everything. Yeah. And we happen to use tarot to do it.
Yeah, it's a complete palette, to be able to draw from, because it has that full spectrum of the joy and the sorrows, and everything in between, the life and death. It's like a complete palette to be able to draw from and help people take from that what they need in a given moment, so that they are moving through difficult situations. And it's usually difficult situations. It's not, people don't come to you and say, my life is going great.
Well, I have often said, I think you and I, when we did our last show here, I think I said it then, and that is, people seek divination. People seek fortune telling.
Yeah.
When their own magic fails them. If you're out creating and you're out manifesting, and the world is your oyster, and you're doing all these things, you're not in need of the certainty and the comfort and maybe the listening ear or compassion that a sitting provides. Now, the interesting thing of all that is that, at least for the people, at least some of the people that I work with, they come to realize it's not about fortune telling. It really is what, that James Wanless concept of fortune creation. And so when I do a reading, again, I don't know about you, when I do a reading, I'll lay the cards down, we'll talk about them, and then I'll say, is there anything here you don't like? Well, I don't like this and I don't like that. I said, great, let's change it. What card would you like to see there? And then we actually replace the card in a very dynamic way and talk about, nothing's free. There's a price for everything. There's an energy exchange for everything. So what has to happen in the sequence of dominoes for that to occur? And it becomes a very mindful, a very focused, and a very creative, for lack of a better term, environment, where they sit there and say, God, maybe I've got more options than I thought.
Yeah. I was just, thinking if one were an unscrupulous gypsy, they would be like, well, I can change that, but it's going to cost you now $1,500 to change that 9 of swords to a 10 of cups.
and therein lies the stigma that has so readily attached themselves to what we'll call the Professor Marvels of the world.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's like, matter of fact, at the beginning of all of my workshops, both virtual and live, I readily tell the folks, look, we're going to take the Google approach. Do no evil. Because that's one of the big things that has gotten fortune tellers in trouble all across the world, and that is, let me take a hex off you, let me put a hex on somebody, let me create a spell for you, let me do that for you, and then you run afoul. It's not the way I work. So yes, an unscrupulous person could easily take any of the things that we're talking about or that you and I practice and wholeheartedly embrace, but that's true of everything. You know, I come from the world of law, of jurisprudence. Oh my God, I can't even begin to tell. There may be unscrupulous fortune tellers out there, but it doesn't bear any resemblance at all to the vast amount of unscrupulous lawyers that there are that I've seen.
Right. Right.
Anything can be misused.
Everything and anything. Absolutely. You know, having power over another, right?
Yeah.
And it is, you know, that is part of building that foundation for a reader of understanding that, you know, someone can be in a place of distress, you know, when they come to seek advice and all. And
well, I think that's why you and I work so well together again, because I think we have a very compatible, if not identical, ethical framework for what we're doing. You know, and again, just kind of imparting some of the stuff that I work with people on. You know, I firmly believe that our obligation is to leave the world in a better place than when we found it.
yes.
I firmly believe that anything you tame is forever your responsibility, that we have these obligations to do no harm. And I don't do negative readings. I might joke with somebody, do you want me to tell you everything in the reading or only the good stuff? You know, just to lighten the mood.
Right.
You don't get around some of these swords cards. You don't get around some of the other cards that point to the obstacles of the hero's journey that the sitter is on. And I think that anybody listening to this who is a reader, probably the best advice I could give you, and I think, Jason, you would wholeheartedly agree, and that is the person sitting across from you is your Luke Skywalker, your Yoda. It's their story, not yours. Our job, to use Ram Dass's terminology, our job in a reading is to help walk people home.
Right. Right. It is to, you know, help them to help themselves, you know, certainly, but it's an awareness. It becomes a catalyst for a reader, a querent, I'm sorry, a sitter, you know, or a querent to discover the power was within all along.
Oh, now you're back to the Wizard of Oz again, where it's, you know, the only thing you actually don't have is the medal. The only thing you don't have is this, right? But you had it all along. Close your eyes and tap your heel.
You know, it was one of my favorite movies as a kid. You know,
there's a reason. You know, there's a reason that the Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland resonate forever, because they're all about hope. It's all about coming home, right? It's all about discovering yourself. And if you actually look at both stories, they are both true monomyths. They're true heroes' journeys with a character arc that leaves your hero or heroine at a higher place at the end of the story. Who doesn't want that? Because I certainly don't like watching sad movies. I watched Titanic. I knew how it was going to end before I started it, and it didn't make it any better. It doesn't end well.
Not for the vast majority of people. It's like there was one person who it like was
Rose.
Yeah, she got something out of it.
But you know, and again, I think that's kind of, you know, when we're reading cards, I think we all need to keep in mind as readers that the people sitting across from us are looking for hope. We're in the hope business.
Yeah. And, you know, it's like when you have students too, that they'll pull like the towers and the 9 of swords and the 3 of swords and, you know, the 8 of swords, all of the swords pretty much. That it's like there's an inclination sometimes for them to like, oh, well, maybe I need to pull another card to, you know, they're hoping for that 10 of cups or that, you know, the lovers or something that will just be a little bit more lighter there. But, you know, sometimes that's exactly the card to dive into to find that that seed of hope in it. You know, I feel that every one of those heavier energy cards, that there is the problem, and there is a way to move through that.
Well, and I think that that's really it. And it's, at least with the way I work with the tarot and the symbolism of it, is to realize it's a deck of 78 options. And you know, that gives you a lot of options. And it also is a card of 78 consequences. And, you know, that's what karma is all about, right? Karma means doing. And so when we say that your karma, this isn't an omen. This isn't a spell put on you and it's like your omen. Or
It sounds karma. Like it, the way a lot of people use it.
It is.
Like, they got their karma.
Yeah.
Like it's a one-time deal.
They did. But in the context, if you replace karma with doing, it's your doing. You did this. And so to go back to the word that you love, by the way, little secret for Hawaiian for all of you, it's everything gets pronounced. Every vowel gets pronounced, unlike what we do here in California, where it's sometimes you can't even call it English. It's in Hawaii, it's ho'oponopono. You just pronounce every letter.
That's helpful.
And so, and that's true of everything over there, which led to a very funny story, because when I spent a lot of time in Hawaii growing up, which is how I originally fell into the kahuna studies, and then that led to ho'oponopono. My sister my younger sister had learned you pronounce everything, and she kept calling it Basilini Road. And finally, one of the locals over there said, "Where's Basilini?" And my sister told her. He said, "That's baseline." So, you know, going back to the ho'oponopono construct in the context of what we're talking about here, Dr. Len, who I learned some of this practice from, had this wonderful, and he's passed on now, but he had this wonderful way of looking at life. And may I share it with you?
Absolutely.
He would say this: did you ever notice that when there's a problem, you're there? And that's really struck home with me, even when I'm doing a reading. When we're talking about your doing, your karma, did you ever notice that whenever something happens, you're there? And so a lot of when I work with folks, it's just, what's your participation in this? What's your ownership of this? How about you take accountability and responsibility and just own it and say, look, I got this. This isn't about shame. This isn't about blame. I'm not into that at all. But I think that part of our work in energy sculpting with folks using the tarot is helping them understand all this stuff at work, even if it may be epigenerational, transgenerational, DNA passed on, imprinting from when you were a kid, you know, all this wonderful stuff that's going on now. At the end of the day, there's still a lot of neuroscience to use for you. And with the plasticity of the mind, you can change anything. And the cards help you do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's so important. You know, it's to see where, like in any situation, it's like you are there, you are present. And sometimes, you know, the individual has a sense of anxiety about it, a sense of where there's fear. And if, you know, I usually, you know, if someone is like pulling, like, let's say the strength card, and how to help them move forward, it's like I see it as like, hey, you know, it's like you've got the lion here by the jaws. It's like you can use your you can use your fear, anxiety to keep you present, you know, to keep you focused. You know, it's like anyone who's done any kind of like theater or so, it doesn't matter if you've done it a million times before. it's like when you're in front of the curtain and it starts to rise, it's like,
Oh,
there's this,
absolutely. Ask me
inner
about it.
euphoria and fear and, excitement, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, it's there to keep you present. And as you move through something, you'll start to usually to like become like friends with it. It'll diminish. It will, you don't have to just be in that state, but it's important to move through it and not just let it, take over where it becomes paralysis.
Well, the interesting thing, because you brought up the strength card, since we're talking about the symbolism and how this all is, when people see, particularly in the Rider-Waite deck, when you see the strength card, it's this female energy figure taking the mouth of a lion, and she is controlling his jaws, right? And while it notoriously stands for mental strength over physical strength, and that type of work, the reality is she's doing something. She's not sitting there and saying, close your mouth, don't bite me, she's not thinking about it. It's that karma thing she's doing. And this is why I've suggested to people, throw the little white book away, or at least put it somewhere and look at it later. Just look at the cards, look at what these people are doing, and ask yourself, what just happened and what will happen next? And that's the best way you can learn these cards, is to say, what has just happened? So the card itself, it's much like in Hollywood, when I went to film school, in screenwriting, the first thing they tell you is come into the action late. Don't give them everything. Don't bore them to death. Remember, it's show business, not tell business.
Yeah.
Come in a little late. So if you take each card as, this is happening right now, but something happened before this. What was it? And something's going to happen right after this. What is that? Probably one of the best ways that you can learn these cards, because suddenly you'll see the dynamic flow and the imagery. I mean, there are elements of these cards, again, using the Rider-Waite deck, because it's so visual, as opposed to the Tarot de Marseille and some of these newer decks that are very, pinpointed. And so some of these elements have been left out. You go take a look at the Fool card and look at forget the Fool, just look around him at what's going on. And a great example, by the way, the Fool card has the little dog nipping.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know if the dog is chasing him over the cliff. Don't know if the dog is warning him not to go over the cliff, exactly, depending on the context.
Yeah.
You go look at that same card in older decks, particularly the Tarot de Marseille, and what you wind up seeing is the dog actually nipping at the Fool's testicles. The far different image. It's a completely different aspect. Yeah. Neither one is wrong, but you're not going to get that from just saying, I know what the Fool card is. The Fool card will change depending on the deck you use.
Yeah.
And that's true of all the cards, by the way.
In your classes, do you have students that have gravitated towards specific decks, like the Lightseer and some of these more popular decks, and they're bringing like a different perspective to their readings based on that newer vision of the deck?
I do. They show up with a lot of different decks. I actually, when I read for someone that I'm not usually reading for, I'll use a Rider-Waite deck, because the symbolism is so there. For me, it's very much like presenting ink blot tests, right? Standard symbolism, it touches the psyche, etc.
Yeah.
For myself and for particular other sitters, I'm actually using what's called the Pagan Otherworlds deck. Different symbolism, while it's a takeoff of the Rider-Waite deck. It's just got a richer design for me. I've had people show up with Hello Kitty tarot decks. And again, here's the cool part. I'm okay with all that. as long as they understand what the symbolism means for them. And so when I get people who aren't at one with their decks yet, I really tell them, go sleep with them. Treat your deck like a lover, put it under your pillow. I mean, don't do that with a real lover, but take your lover, take your deck to bed.
Good advice.
Take your deck,
from
take
a
your
lawyer.
deck, take your deck to bed and put it under your pillow, much like you used to do as, with money as a little kid waiting for the tooth fairy.
Right.
And your subconscious will pick up on, I've got this deck here. What the hell does it all mean to me? And, for listeners, if they even want to go to a deeper level, at some point, I do not suggest that you do it on your own. I do suggest that you get someone to work with you on this, because there's some nuances to it. But if you want to go to an even deeper level with the 22 majors, you can do path work. And that's taking the 22 cards, putting them on the Kabbalah tree of life, and literally going on visual journeys with every card and having them come alive with you in these kind of projected journeys through the tree of life, because each of the 22 cards corresponds to one of the paths on the tree of life. But that's not going to be for everybody.
One of the things that I didn't mention about you as far as an identity is one of hypnotherapist. Do you along those lines, as far as like the meditative aspects of connecting with cards, have you ever done anything that was like an experiment or so with the tarot and hypnosis?
Well, let's back up for a minute, if I might. Yes, I am a certified hypnotherapist here in the United States and in some countries overseas. It's now considered a consulting hypnotist, a certified consulting hypnotist, rather than a hypnotherapist, because our insurance industry does not like the term therapy, right? Overseas, again, in some countries, they love the word therapy, and you can be a hypnotherapist. So I'm not a therapist. Now, let's go back to hypnosis. I've learned all of this stuff, but I don't use trance. So I want to make that distinction, because what I have done, Jason, it's a great question, is I have combined the concepts of neuro-linguistic programming and conversational hypnosis. There's no actual trance.
So there's no induction.
There's no induction.
Like, you're now going deeper or deeper.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to do that. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I tell students, as soon as I say, "Hey, Jason, may I tell you a story?"
Yes, master.
No. Can I tell you a story, right?
Yeah.
So, once upon a time. Now, as soon as I say those words, once upon a time, whether you want to or not, your subconscious goes back to milk and cookies and nap time, and I own you, essentially. By the way, deep, dark little secret of Scott's, I use this kind of stuff I use conversational hypnosis all the time in my trial work when I was a lawyer. And it's why? You're getting it every day anyway. You guys call them commercials, right? So don't think for a minute you're not being talked to in a very Milton Erickson and Carl Jung way of saying words matter. It doesn't require an induction. Let's start with that. But what I do use are the majors. And I don't use this on everybody. It's not for everybody. But what I've taken is Virginia Satir's concept of family sculpting. And her therapeutic work. And if people don't know her, please look her up. She's a wonderful originator.
How do you spell her last name?
S as in Sam, A, T as in Tom, I-R. She's actually one of the neuro-linguistic programming in part came from her work. It wasn't all Milton Erickson that Grinder and Bandler modeled. They also modeled Virginia Satir. And she's kind of like the mother of family therapy, the mother of all family therapy. And when you look at her work, what she would do is she would take the energies of the family unit, attempting to put it back together. And she would say, okay, here's the mom role, here's the dad role, here are the siblings roles, here's the grandparents role. And if you are into Indigenous or Native American training, you go back 7 generations and you go forward 7 generations, and gets very involved. I took that concept and said, you know what? I'm going to do the same thing, but we're going to use the majors. And so there's no induction, there's no trance, but there is some guided visualization where I go through and have folks with my ethical guidance, choosing the cards that best represent themselves for where they are in their energies, and then the other energies that are played, the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And we may go backwards and forwards generationally and find all of those. And it becomes a very, very powerful consulting, cooperative, collaborative time together, all using the concepts of hypnosis, but without induction.
Right. So can it be like a form of like archetypal role playing, that like looking to see where someone is at in a situation that they're, looking to resolve? And it's like if one needs to be more reflective or whatever, it's like taking on the role of the hermit, or if they're needing to be more assertive in their actions, the chariot. Are you guiding that? Are you kind of choosing that archetype for them to?
No, I'm not choosing anything for them. Placement. So it becomes a very 3-dimensional, almost a role-playing game concept where, we can't do it on the air here, but imagine the tarot cards having 3 dimensions instead of 2. Imagine them being game pieces. So for example, Jason, you know the cards well enough. If I can use you as an example, I won't go through the whole system, but just at the beginning, anybody can do this part. Imagine where you are right now. Imagine the majors. And there's a routine I take people through, but for the sake of time today, Jason, is there a particular tarot card that says, Jason, I am you, you are me, pick me right now? Is there one particular card?
The star card.
Okay. We would then explore that star card and what that means, with the understanding, I pass this on to you. You didn't choose the moon, which is reflective. You didn't choose the sun. You chose the star between the two of them, right? So you're not reflecting, but you're also not the closest heat object to our planet. And when I hear the star card, this is someone to me, and I learned this from something Usher had said, of all people. And I get gems of wisdom from everybody I meet, from anything I see and read, etc. And Usher said this wonderful thing that I just really took to heart. Jason, stars don't stand still. They twinkle. And that kind of tells me everything about the star card, right? Constantly moving, constantly getting energy going, but twinkling constantly. Hey, I'm here. I matter, right? And that pulsating energy. The interesting thing is, so Jason, you've got 21 cards left. What does the star want to become?
The emperor.
So big difference, right? Because many people choosing the star, they want to become the sun. You want to become the emperor. And so then we go through and explore, okay, how close is that? And it becomes a very proximity-based reading, far different than what you and I and many other readers do normally. And that's, we take a 2-dimensional, there's 3 dimensions, but it's essentially a 2-dimensional card.
Yeah.
We lay it down in a layout. We, do the Celtic cross. We do all these wonderful things, or the layouts that you put
I don't
together.
do the Celtic cross.
I don't either, but it's, I just say,
yeah.
You will if you read the Little White Book. I don't use it. I've got my own spreads. You've got your own spread. You've got this wonderful journal coming out. We're so used to seeing them flat, but that's not the real world. And so I actually have these little stands that hold the cards, and they go down on my Vitruvian square matrix that I have, and it becomes a game board, and it's very three-dimensional so that the camera's looking down at them. And then, and again, we're not going to do it for sake of time here, but imagine taking the star card, and you can see that. Imagine moving through that to the emperor and all the ramifications that has. And I haven't even begun to tell you, what is the star under stress? What is this, what if we shine the light on the star's biggest fear, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But what about the divine energy, feminine and masculine in your life? Which cards are those? And then I actually have people, so it's a little bit of talk therapy among other things, where I actually have these cards talking to each other, and it becomes a very cathartic, eye-opening experience. And I created this based on some of the stuff I was going through at the time. My dad had died, and he was the patriarch in the family. My grandparents had passed away, and it kind of fell to me. And the interesting thing was, I came to the realization, when my dad died, there was a hole in the family. Who the hell is the emperor now? Well, I'm supposed to be the emperor, but I felt like the magician. I wasn't the emperor, but there's this vacuum in the family. And if you listen and follow some of the family therapy constructs of Virginia Satir and others, you find out that, as we know from a metaphysical standpoint, energy doesn't disappear. It doesn't just go away, it goes somewhere. Well, there's this gaping hole of emperor energy gone. What the hell is that supposed to be? And so, as I'm working through all this myself, it's like, well, shit, what has to happen for me to become the emperor as a magician? And one thing led to another, and that's how this system came about, which, by the way, I'm guessing is probably very similar to some of the stuff you're doing with your energy work.
Yeah, it is very much like it looks at, because it boils down to alignment, right? It's like finding those places of inner alignment where it matches the outer alignment, one's relationships, so that who you see as yourself inside, that you're able to project that out into the world, and that that becomes that reality, and the two meet, that there is agreement with that. So we've been talking like just nonstop.
Yeah, we do that.
And it's what I love about you as a friend and a great colleague. You're a wealth of wisdom, Scott. How can people find you?
Best thing to do, go to thinkingmagically.com. That's THINKING, magically, MAGICALLY.com. You can see how to contact me there, and I'm on all the social media sites. And I'd love to hear from people. Thank you for having me on, Jason. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And it's like you're available through, Zoom, through the online, and you're starting to do your live. It sounds like classes and shows, and like a mix of all of that, right?
It's a mix. I prefer now to work online, but the world's opening up again, so I'm opening up with it.
Yeah, that's so amazing, Scott.
Maybe you and I'll do Sedona sometime. One of my favorite places in the whole world.
The energy, it's like I always love the drive in. It's like you're on this highway, and it's just kind of desert brown and not as interesting. And then you take the side road into Sedona, and then you're winding around, and then the red rocks. Oh,
I got to tell you, Airport Vortex is my favorite of all of them, but wonderful place to do stuff.
Yeah. Just quickly, because we have just a minute here. Do you go into a meditative state? Do you look to read tarot for yourself? What do you do there when?
No, it's much more intuitive, mindful. Just I'm here and now. I am here. I've got this whole thing that I go through, but it's I'm here. It's much more, and unfortunately, modern development is spreading out there. You know, I remember when I remember going out there and looking at the plateaus, there were no houses. Now they're just everywhere. You know, depending on the medicine wheels you might find out there at any given time, I might use those. So it's a more indigenous, Native American, without being, you know, without taking on their culture, but it's a much more earthy feel to it for me. And Airport Vortex for me has just a different, lighter feel than some of the other vortices out there.
Yeah. Do you ever notice like how the shrubbery and the sage and all that, how it has this winding structure to the limbs, the branches, the way that the plants are all like, they have this energy to them. They're like their own vortex.
It's not only that, but you know, I've got a labyrinth here in my backyard. It's a 30-foot diameter labyrinth that was built with them in mind, keeping, you know, what I felt in Sedona. And so I like to talk to the rocks. I know you're talking about the plants, but the rocks have such a history and feel to them. So I'm a rock whisperer sometimes too.
Oh my God, you've just added that to your bio too.
Rock whisperer.
Rock whisperer. Yeah. I love it.
So
Scott,
I need to leave you.
Scott, thank you so much. Much love to you, and blessings, and go rock it.
Thank you, Jason. And Tara, I know you'll be listening. Love you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you for listening to Transformations today. I am Jason D McKean. My website, jasondmckean.com. And thank you. Many blessings.